Fellow gardeners, I'm about to share something that completely changed my composting game. After years of waiting months for decent compost, I stumbled upon a single ingredient that transformed my pile into rich black humus faster than I ever thought possible. This isn't some expensive additive or complicated scientific formula. It's something you might already have access to, and it's been hiding in plain sight. I remember standing in my backyard last spring, frustrated with my sluggish compost pile that had been sitting there for what felt like forever. The brown and green materials were there, the ratios seemed right, but the decomposition was crawling along at a snail's pace. That's when my neighbor, an old-timer with the most incredible garden I'd ever seen, casually mentioned his secret weapon-fresh horse manure. Here's the truth that transformed my composting approach. Fresh horse manure is nature's ultimate compost accelerator. While most gardening advice warns against using fresh manure directly on plants, and rightfully so, incorporating it into your compost pile creates a biological powerhouse that kickstarts decomposition like nothing else I've tried. Fresh horse manure brings three critical elements to your compost pile that make all the difference. First, it's loaded with nitrogen, which feeds the microorganisms responsible for breaking down organic matter. Second, it contains billions of beneficial bacteria and microbes that immediately colonize your pile and begin the decomposition process. Third, and perhaps most importantly, it generates heat, lots of it. The heat generation is where the magic really happens. Within 24 to 48 hours of adding fresh horse manure to my compost pile, the internal temperature shoots up to between 130 and 160 degrees Fahrenheit. This intense heat doesn't just speed up decomposition, it also kills weed seeds and harmful pathogens that might be lurking in your organic materials. I learned this the hard way after years of dealing with volunteer tomatoes sprouting everywhere from my old cool temperature compost. Traditional composting advice often focuses on achieving the perfect carbon-to-nitrogen ratio, usually around 30:1. While this ratio is important, what most guides miss is the crucial role of microbial activity and heat generation in accelerating the process. Fresh horse manure doesn't just provide nitrogen, it introduces a thriving ecosystem of decomposer organisms that are already accustomed to breaking down organic matter quickly and efficiently. The reason horse manure works better than other animal manures for this purpose comes down to diet and digestion. Horses are hindgut fermenters, meaning much of their digestion happens in the large intestine through bacterial fermentation. This process creates manure that's already rich in the exact types of bacteria your compost pile needs, and since horses don't fully digest all the plant matter they consume, their manure contains partially decomposed organic materials that serve as perfect starter cultures for your pile. I've experimented with chicken manure, cow manure, and even commercially available compost activators, but nothing comes close to the rapid results I get with fresh horse manure. The key word here is fresh-aged manure has already lost much of its microbial activity and heat-generating potential. Finding fresh horse manure might seem challenging if you don't live in a rural area, but you'd be surprised how many opportunities exist even in suburban settings. Local riding stables, horse boarding facilities, and even mounted police units are often happy to give away their manure. They consider it a disposal problem, while we see it as black gold. When I collect horse manure, I always bring my own containers and shovel, and I'm respectful of the facility's rules and schedules. Most places appreciate that I'm solving their waste disposal issue, and I've built great relationships with several local stables that now call me when they have fresh loads available. The incorporation process is straightforward but requires some attention to ratios. For every wheelbarrow load of fresh horse manure, I add about 2 to 3 wheelbarrow loads of carbon-rich materials like dried leaves, shredded paper, or brown cardboard. This maintains the proper carbon-to-nitrogen balance while giving the manure enough material to work on. I layer the materials rather than mixing them initially. First goes a layer of carbon materials, then the fresh manure, then more carbon, and so on. This layering approach prevents the pile from becoming too nitrogen-rich and developing that unpleasant ammonia smell that indicates nitrogen loss. The transformation happens remarkably quickly once you add fresh horse manure to your pile. Within the first day, you'll notice the pile warming up significantly. Sometimes you can actually see steam rising from it on cool mornings. By day 3 or 4, the internal temperature peaks, and the serious decomposition begins. During the first week, I turn the pile every other day to ensure even heating and decomposition. This frequent turning also prevents anaerobic conditions that can create foul odors and slow down the process. The horse manure seems to maintain microbial activity even as I disturb the pile, which isn't always the case with other composting methods I've tried. By the end of the second week, the pile volume reduces by about 40 to 50%, and you can see that the original materials are breaking down rapidly. What used to be recognizable kitchen scraps and yard waste starts looking more like uniform dark organic matter. The most exciting part comes around day 18 to 21. The pile cools down as the most readily available nutrients are consumed, but instead of slowing down, the decomposition enters a different phase. The materials continue breaking down, but more slowly and steadily. By day 30 to 35, I have rich, dark, crumbly humus that rivals any commercial compost I've ever purchased. The biggest concern I hear from gardeners about using fresh horse manure is the risk of introducing weed seeds or creating nutrient burn. The high heat generated in the pile effectively addresses both issues. The sustained temperatures above 130 degrees Fahrenheit kill most weed seeds and pathogens, while the composting process transforms the fresh manure into a stable, slow-release form that won't burn plants. Another common worry is odor, and I'll be honest. There is a smell during the first few days. However, it's not the overwhelming neighbors complaining to the city kind of smell you might expect. With proper carbon ratios and regular turning, the odor remains earthy and manageable, similar to what you'd smell around a working farm. Some gardeners worry about antibiotic residues or other medications that might be in horse manure. While this is a valid concern, the composting process, combined with the high temperatures and microbial activity, breaks down most pharmaceutical residues. If you're particularly concerned, seek out organic horse facilities or ask about the horse's medication history. This one-ingredient hack opened my eyes to the power of biological activity in composting. Since discovering the effectiveness of fresh horse manure, I've started paying more attention to other ways to boost microbial populations in my compost piles. I save some of my finished compost to inoculate new piles, and I've experimented with adding garden soil from healthy active beds to introduce additional beneficial organisms. The speed and quality of compost I now produce has transformed my entire gardening approach. Instead of buying expensive soil amendments, I'm producing more high-quality compost than my garden can use. I share extras with neighbors, use it as mulch around trees and shrubs, and even give bags away to fellow gardeners who visit my YouTube channel and want to try growing their own. Ready to revolutionize your composting game? If this hack transforms your garden like it did mine, make sure to subscribe to Soil Sensei for more game-changing gardening insights. Share this article with fellow gardeners who are tired of waiting months for decent compost. They'll thank you when they're harvesting from soil enriched with beautiful black humus. Your garden and your gardening friends deserve soil this good.